I don't know if we'd call this music scientific, although it probably is the closest thing to being scientific. A little bit of Mozart taking us into this segment. Usually, when you're talking about things related to what's up in the heavens and the stars and the like, you're used to hearing something, I think, maybe a bit more.
Well, you should probably do Bach then. Bach was very mathematical in his
Yes.
compositions. So yeah.
Yeah, he was my favorite in music appreciation in college. And I'd go to the music library, put on the old fashioned headsets.
Yep.
They didn't look anything like these that we wear today. It's a long, long time ago. They were like sort of out of the Flintstones for people who might be wondering when that was. 24 minutes after the hour. And of course, first of all, Chris Anderson joining us in studio from the Herrett Center.
Good morning.
Right here at the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls.
Belated Happy New Year, by the way.
Yes,
belated. I wasn't here last month.
You had a very busy month. We should point
Yes.
that out. And that's to be, I think, expected in your line of work. It's at 20 right now, and Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. First of all, to get right to the schedule, it's going to get very, very busy
Yes.
at the museum.
Well, I mean, specifically the observatory next week, we've got 3 events. Our Telescope Tuesday, first for the month of February, and second to last for the season, because of course once daylight saving comes back in March, then we won't do those anymore, because it's too late by the time it gets dark on a weeknight. So that'll be on the 9th, and that'll start at 7 o'clock. So you can come. It's either $1.50 to come for the Telescope Tuesday, or if you come to the planetarium show, admittedly you miss the first hour or so of the Telescope Tuesday, but we're there till 9 o'clock. So if the weather's good, and come check it out. And then we also have on the following day, on Wednesday, is our first astronomy talk for the year, and this one will be. And I'll tell you what, I'm feeling a little pleased with myself, because I chose this topic months ago, and now it turns out it's kind of popping up in the news about the possible detection of gravitational waves. There's a physicist named Lawrence Krauss who's been sort of hinting through his tweets that he's got some inside knowledge that maybe we really have detected gravitational waves. People have been trying to do this for a better part of 40 years. And if we actually do it this year, well, when I first put this my schedule together, one of the things I put in the talk for February was, is this the year we'll detect them for the first time? So maybe I was prophetic in that, but we'll see, and I'll talk about that on the 10th, and then and of course the observatory is open after that as well, and the talk on the 10th starts at 6:30. So that's normally a night when we're closed, so the doors of the museum will open around 6:15 to let people in, and then talk will start at 6:30, and that'll be in the planetarium. And then the following Saturday, so not this coming Saturday, but the 13th, is our monthly free star party, since it's the second Saturday of the month. And so the observatory will be open from 7 to midnight, as long as it's clear. Please dress warmly.
Yes.
We do not heat the observatory. There's a lot of folks that come up, oh, it's indoors, right? Well, it is indoors, but the windows are open, so to speak.
Yes, when you open it up, it gets a little chilly.
So yeah, we want you to be comfortable and enjoy yourself. So that'll be on the 13th, and that's what's going on in the observatory next week. And then we've got starting tomorrow, our planetarium. The Faulkner Planetarium, we're going to shift our schedule a little bit, bring back some programs that have been off the schedule for a little while. So the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon show is going to be coming back, Lewis and Clark IMAX film, which is really good, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's narrated by Jeff Bridges. That one's coming back. And then Perfect Little Planet, which is always a favorite. The kids love that feeling of zooming and whooshing around and 3D kind of feeling. So all 3 of those will be coming back on the schedule. If you want the show times, you can always go to our web page, or you can go to our Facebook page, all the usual stuff. Call our information line, 732-6655. My store manager insists that I point out that our Valentine's Day sale starts tomorrow, goes through the 13th, and we've got a whole lot of very well-themed items. If you're looking for just little small items, I guess the Valentine's Day equivalent of stocking stuffers. We've got these little like stone hearts, little ones that are like the celestial bells, those sort of things too, but a little nicer things as well. We've got some of the jewelry is always very popular over at the store there too. And so that's 20% off on most of those items, just a few exceptions like Meade telescopes, are not marked down by 20%. But
Stately claims that in Idaho, the big gift on Valentine's Day is taxidermy.
Oh, yeah. I'm afraid we don't have any of that to offer, but Yeah, that's the. I used to go to a school with a fellow from Hibbing, Minnesota. He claimed the leading cause of death in Hibbing was being mistaken for a deer.
Yes.
So
To wear the brown coats and hold the sticks over your head.
exactly. And one other thing I should point out to folks, of course, there is construction going on North College Road right now. And so if you're trying to come to the Herrett Center off of Blue Lakes, don't. You just can't. You get on North College Road and right about the expo, you're going to get stopped. So best way to get there is come on North College Road from the west. So you're going to want to come off of Washington is really the best way. But you can also come through campus. Either one of those will get you to there. But there's a bunch of signs on North College that'll make it look like the road is closed when you're coming from the west. Ignore the signs. It's okay. I promise it's okay. The last signs you get to will be right before the Herrett Center. You can just turn right there. So you're good.
And I was going to say they're building a tunnel there or something, considering how long this is taking.
Oh yeah, no, they're this is the extension of the road that's going to sort of bypass around as campus grows across North College. So they've been talking about this for a long time, but yeah, it's quite a major undertaking over there. They're really tearing things up. So
more with Chris Anderson coming up. He's with us from the Herrett Center, the College of Southern Idaho. And it's 20 right now, 9:30. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Oh, from The Natural. Now, that was a great movie.
I don't think I ever saw it.
You never saw?
I'm afraid not.
I don't mean to divert us, but I was in graduate school at the University of Buffalo while they were filming it. And the old War Memorial Stadium in Buffalo, they had to gussy it up, believe me. I mean, it was a dump. So they had to go paint it to make it look better for them, even though it was supposed to be an old-time stadium. Sure. And they were filming some of the scenes at Parkside Candies around the block and down the street from my house. Huh. And I decided to go see filming one day, and you couldn't get within a couple of blocks. Huh. But everything on the street had been replaced by cars that were 40 years old.
Sure.
So it would have that period look to it. So, but I never got to see Robert Redford or Glenn Close or anybody else who was involved in it. I did go out to the stadium, and you could park in the neighbors' yards for $2. And in May, you could sit wearing your parka in the stands watching a ball game. It was, it was great. And our weather here is somewhat strikingly like that right now.
Yeah, it seems that way.
9:34. Joining us, Chris Anderson from the Herrett Center in studio with us this morning. It's 22, and of course, Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You were telling us a little bit about some of the events you have coming up. Anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, a little bit of an early heads up here, but of course, now that we are moving towards spring, our annual Science Overnight is coming up, and we've got a new educator this year, Laura Brawarni, who's really excited about putting this event together. So the date's been picked. It's going to be April 1st, no fooling. So we'll have more information about when you can start to register for that. But just be aware if you've got a kid in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade age, this is a big deal, and kids really enjoy this. It's a great event. And often, for mom and dad, it's kind of a fun night out. The kids spends the night at the museum, and that's a night for mom and dad to have their date night or whatever. So
yes, so quiet.
So yeah, we'll have more information about that coming on the website pretty soon here. But
do you find that when you bring children in at that age and you expose them to this, that because if it happens when they're 18, I don't think that they would generally walk away with an interest in it, because most of us, we got interested in what we pursued in life when we were still young.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And studies have shown repeatedly that if you haven't developed an interest in science well before high school, you probably never will. And so that's exactly right. That's why we target this age group, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. This is when kids are they're science sponges. They'll soak up as much of it as you can give to them and want more. And it's great. As an educator, I really enjoy that age group too, because they're old enough to be able to form good questions and know how to, communicate well what it is they're trying to find out. But they haven't gotten old enough to start thinking whether or not it's cool to ask questions. So it's kind of the sweet spot for an educator to the kids in that age range. So
in 5th grade, in fact, I remember, speaking of that dumpy city, which is really just East Duluth, at Buffalo, they took us when we were in 5th grade. They took us to the Museum of Science, which none of us had seen anything like this before. I mean, they had a giant pendulum that was several stories high.
Pendulum, yeah.
And then we went to a program, and some kids had bought gyroscopes in the gift shop. And my cousin, he had a flat top haircut, and they were spinning gyroscopes atop his head. But, it drew the interest in it. I mean, as funny as that sounds, and we're playing it, yet were involved with it, and that's
Sure.
that hands-on type of
Yep,
experience.
exactly, and that's exactly what the Science Overnight is. It's a kid opportunity for kids to have these small group, hands-on type experiences with science encounters, and hopefully, in a way that really reinforces the idea that science is fun. I mean, I think that's where you talk to almost any scientist and ask, on a basic level, how they got into science in the first place. Is because they found it fun as a kid, and so we're trying to spark that interest if we can. So.
Nobody gets a chemistry set, I guess, anymore as a kid.
Yeah, probably not. I mean,
It was fairly common. It seemed everybody had one in the
sure.
neighborhood
Yeah,
40 years
I know
ago.
I did. My brothers all did. So yeah, yeah.
You have some other events coming up too on the calendar?
That's it pretty much for the month of February. That's hopefully we'll see folks for all these things. We got like I said, Telescope Tuesdays on the 9th and the 23rd, Astronomy Talk on the 10th, Star Party on the 13th. New planetarium shows coming back onto the schedule for the month. So yeah.
We're going to spend some time after this break talking about Plan 9 from outer space. No, Planet 9 or Planet 10 or Planet X or whatever it's called.
Yeah, sure.
There has been some updates on all of this.
Absolutely.
And just as you were mentioning gravity waves, I got an email from a friend the other day. I'd forgotten this, but there are some places actually in Western New York State where you can go park on a road, put the car in neutral, and it appears your car is actually rolling uphill.
Yes, yep. Mystery hills. Those are
Yeah.
a well documented and well understood phenomenon. Actually,
Usually it's an optical illusion.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we used to bring kids from college who'd come home on weekends, drive them all over to Promised Land Road, it was called, and show that when you grow up in a small town, it's the biggest entertainment you
Sure.
have. But I was watching the video, and of course the person who put the video together left it open as to what the cause was. But I think that my dad ruined it for me when I was 12 or 13 by telling me. So the
Yep.
mystery went away at that point.
Yep.
We've got more with Chris Anderson coming up from the Herrett Center at the College of Southern Idaho. It's 22, and it's 9:40, we'll call it, almost 9:40. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And, of course, if you have a comment or question for our guest, feel free to give us a shout during the next segment of the program. Chris Anderson joining us in the studio this morning from the College of Southern Idaho's Herrett Center, and talking a little science for the first time in a couple of months. Actually, I think that when you were here the last time, I guess I may have been here, but I was on vacation for a long stretch in December. We missed you in January.
Yep.
And so it has been a while since you've been in the studio.
Yes, it has.
We were talking a little bit off air, and then just mentioned it briefly a few minutes ago. Out in the far reaches of the galaxy, there's a lot of discussion going on about a planet out there. I read last week where people are saying there's a typical what you might call fear mongering, that it's going to crash into Earth, even though it is. We've got several other buffers between us.
Well, and most importantly, we know, if this thing exists, and that's a big if, because there is no smoking gun evidence yet. There are some tantalizing hints that it could exist. But even if it does exist, we have a pretty good idea of what its orbit would be, and that orbit would bring it absolutely nowhere near not just the inner solar system, but even the outer solar system. I mean, even Pluto it gets much closer to the sun than this planet would. So, yeah, this is not something to lose any sleep over, assuming it even does exist. So.
It would not fall out of its orbit and then draw a bead on Earth.
No, that would violate Newton's laws of motion. Would somehow have to magically lose, gobs of momentum, which things just don't do. Momentum is a conserved quantity; it doesn't just magically go away. So yeah, it's going to keep doing what it's been doing for billions of years, assuming it actually is out there. So
and the other thing is, when we send a probe out there, it takes years for a probe to pass. So if this thing was actually on the move.
Yeah, and even then, we would have to have aimed a probe where this thing is going to be when the probe gets there, because with such an enormous orbit, the odds are very good. If you just send a probe in a random direction, you're going to miss it by literally billions of miles. So yeah, it's it would have to be very specifically targeted. And since all we think we know now is the basic orientation and shape of the orbit, we don't even know where it is along that orbit if it is indeed out there. So it could be almost anywhere along this orbit, which is a huge volume of space. I mean, it's an enormously long path out there. And so what often gets kind of missed with all the announcements about the scientists who say they have the evidence for this thing being out there is, if you read some of those stories carefully, they'll point out that they've actually already been looking for this thing for about a year and have yet to find it. Now, admittedly, they need some bigger telescopes to do the job because it's so far out it would be very, very faint. And but they're pretty much calling on the rest of the astronomical community now to say, okay, we've been looking for it for a year and we haven't found it. Help! We want some other eyes out there looking for this thing as well. So
If you can't see it, I mean, my guess is it's not Jupiter or Saturn sized, so it's got to be tiny.
it's more like Neptune size. So it's bigger than the Earth and smaller than the big giant planets.
Is it a rock or is it gas?
They're guessing it probably would be a gaseous planet, just because that's what you expect at those kind of large distances. But they don't really know for sure. That's the thing is, their guess is that it would be a Neptune-like planet. So it'd be, sort of gas liquid mixture, but they don't really know for sure.
What leads them to believe that it might be there then if we haven't seen it?
Okay, so if you go back to how Neptune was discovered when they looked at the motions of the known objects, including Uranus, and they noticed that Uranus was not moving quite the way you'd expect if there wasn't something out there tugging on it. And so they did the calculations of where that thing would have to be producing those effects on Uranus's orbit. And on the very first night of looking for it, they found Neptune. So this is a very long-standing traditional way of discovering planets. And of course, this is the same way they tried to discover Pluto. They said, all right, let's take a look at Neptune. Let's see how it's moving. We'll see if we can discover if there should be something out there tugging on it. They went looking. They found Pluto. The problem with Pluto was that it had way too small of a mass to account for the apparently anomalous motions of Neptune. Well, we later learned that Neptune wasn't moving in a strange way. It's because we didn't know its mass well enough, and once we sent the Voyager spacecraft past it to measure its mass more accurately, then it was moving exactly the way you'd expect it to be. So what these scientists have done now is, rather than use the motions of planets to look for this other object out there, they've used the motions of some of these distant, far-flung objects known as the Kuiper Belt objects, of which Pluto is, a very famous example. Now, Pluto's not one of the orbits that they're seeing disturbed. There are more distant ones out there. There are specifically 6 of them. The probably most famous one people have heard of is the one called Sedna, but there's 5 others out there, and all of their orbits have this rather peculiar quality in common. They approach the sun on pretty much the same side when they make their close approach to the sun, and they do so almost in the plane of the rest of the solar system. Now, that seems like a terrible coincidence for that to be the case, and so what they're arguing is it's not a coincidence. They're arguing that there's a big object out there that's been sort of shoving these orbits around for the last 4 billion years, and so they did their calculations using computer simulations, saying, well, where would this object have to be? How much mass would it have to have? What kind of orbit would it have to have in order to have accomplished this moving around of these other objects' orbits? And so that's the basis of the so-called Planet 9. So right now, like I say, it's all a very circumstantial case, and I think it'll be interesting to see. Frankly, I'm not holding my breath that there actually is something out there. I think there's other possible explanations that maybe have been overlooked here. But hey, I'd be thrilled if they actually did find another planet out there. So
we talk about this occasionally. I think when you're here, George Norrie hosts his overnight show on this station, as well as a couple of hundred others. And some mornings I'm driving in and I hear all of these discussions about a race called the Anunnaki. And last week I just heard that they were wandering in the desert in Arizona. And they look like big Brillo pads, and and there are people out there who believe all of this stuff. It turns out, when I was reading about Planet 9, that I did not know this. There was a writer many, many years ago who put forth that the Anunnaki came from this distant planet, and so it's actually fiction, but some people have adopted it as if it's real.
Well, and there actually was a fellow named Sitchin who proposed a lot of this based on his personal and rather unique interpretation of ancient Babylonian cylinder seals and things like that. And that's really where the whole Nibiru concept arose from. And he kind of tied it together. And because Anunnaki does come from Babylonian ancient tradition. And so he kind of cobbled together all this stuff. But unfortunately, his scholarship is just, is so far off the beaten path. And, the vast majority of Babylonian scholars will point out that his logic is just terribly flawed, and to draw all these conclusions the way he did it's just frankly it's kind of silly. So
he's like L. Ron Hubbard in many ways.
This guy, actually, I think a closer comparison would be, if you remember back in the 70s, was Velikovsky, the guy that claimed that Venus was a comet that had been spat out of Jupiter, and it came through and went zipping past the Earth several times and produced the effects that were described in the Old Testament as miraculous miraculous effects like the Earth standing still, or the Earth stopped rotating so the sun would stand still in the sky. And so he tried to put together all these ideas. Well, we know that Venus is not a comet, certainly not one that was spat from Jupiter. I mean, some of the physics of this is incredibly silly. And Carl Sagan actually arose to public attention by being the first person to really sort of publicly debunk a lot of Velikovsky's claims. So to me, Sitchin is sort of our latter day Velikovsky, really. His or if you prefer, who's the fellow who did Chariots of the Gods? Eric von Daniken. Same sort of thing. They've presented what seems like a scholarly argument, but it's based on some really extreme extrapolations away from the mainstream thought. So
it sells very well, though.
Oh yeah, it makes for great books and videos and YouTube and that sort of stuff, but not much there from a science standpoint, I'm afraid.
Carl Sagan, and the first time I really encountered him, I was working up in the Finger Lakes, and of course he was still living in Ithaca at the time.
Right.
And the old winged Pegasus that they used to use at the old mobile gas stations,
Sure.
he had one that he erected in his backyard. He bought it at a sale. Someone stole it.
Ah.
And I remember the police spokesman, Sergeant Barnes, telling me very plainly, in a sort of a monotone voice, "Oh, we had a theft in the city overnight." And I said, "What was that?" He says, "Carl Sagan's winged Pegasus." And then he became, after debunking some of these things, then he became a regular on the Johnny Carson program.
Sure.
And then that he became as big a celebrity, I think, as these people making all of this up.
Oh yeah, the Cosmos series, and that was he. For many years, and even to this day, if you think about it, when someone becomes a big popularizer of science, they're often called the modern Carl Sagan, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson is our modern Carl Sagan, right? So his very name.
He's doing a remake of the show, right?
Yeah, he did. He did a wonderful remake of Cosmos. So yeah, it's been fun. But and there's other contenders for that title, that mantle as well. But I think Tyson probably has the most legitimate claim on it at the moment. But
9:53, and we want to point out Chris Anderson joining us in the studio, and 736-0300 is the telephone number. It's 23, and you're up next. You're on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yeah, Bill, I just wanted to call in. Well, something besides politics today. I just took my boys to the Herrett Center on Saturday, and we had a great time. Watched one of your shows, and they all loved it. And anybody who's listening that has not been there, or if you haven't been there in a while, it was very entertaining and a good way to get the kids out and learn something.
Great. Did you see the Edge of Darkness show, the new one?
The Monsters one.
Sea Monsters. Oh, yeah, that one's always popular with kids, too.
That's one my boys want to go to.
Yep.
Appreciate what you guys do there.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for the telephone call. Really, in the middle of winter, you talk a little bit about what it might cost you to go to the regular movie theater versus what it costs you to go maybe to the Herrett Center for a day.
Sure.
There's no comparison, really. I mean, you could take, if you have 3 or 4 kids, I don't want to say it's a cheap date, but it's certainly a bargain compared to what people would see other places.
Well, a few years ago, the Times News actually did describe the Faulkner Planetarium as the best cheap date in town. So
yeah. We have another caller looking to join us, and you're up next. You're on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I was just curious if anybody's found the center of the universe or any indications of where it might be.
Well, the current
Wallace, Idaho.
The current thinking in cosmology is that there really is no center. And as peculiar as that may sound, the best way to think of it is that no matter where you would be in the universe, it would have the appearance of being at the center, simply because as you look out, all the galaxies would seem to be receding from you, regardless of where you are. So, the analogy that's often used is the loaf of raisin bread that hasn't been baked yet and it's still rising. Every one of the raisins is a galaxy. If you sit on a raisin, all the other raisins are receding from you, and it doesn't matter which raisin you're on, you have that same perspective. Now, you might say, well, but the loaf still has a center to it. So then we take you to the analogy of an inflating balloon. So the universe now is not the inside of the balloon, it's the surface of the balloon. And if you put a bunch of dots on the balloon and then start to inflate it, every dot will see every other dot receding from it, even though none of them is at the center of the balloon. So the center per se is actually not even part of the space that we occupy. We are simply the surface of that balloon. Now, if you're having trouble wrapping your head around that, it's because I've removed one of the dimensions of the universe in order to make it into a two-dimensional surface on a balloon. So our universe is simply a three-dimensional volume wrapped around itself, if you will. I know that's a little hard to visualize, but don't feel bad. I think most people, including myself, have a hard time wrapping their head around that. So
Your perception of where you are generally makes it the center, right?
exactly, yeah. So pretty much, no matter where you'd be in the universe, it would seem to you as though you were at the center, regardless of where you are.
See, I've been arguing that they send me to Wallace for a day to do the show from there, so I can say I'm doing the show from the center of the universe.
Well, now doesn't Wallace isn't their motto the hub of what is it, Idaho? Is it this, or do they actually have hub of the universe? Because I know there's a small town in Indiana that actually you drive in a town and it says right on their sign hub of the universe on their town sign.
I think Wallace uses center of the
Oh,
universe.
okay, so there's a
And
center
they
and the
literally
hub,
have
okay.
a manhole on one of the streets, and the manhole is engraved as being the center of all things, a manhole being the center of the universe.
Well, it's good to feel good about yourself, I guess. Yeah.
It's a great tourist promotion, if nothing else. I mean, it's got to, when you're looking for something to do, and probably there's nothing. It's a town of 800 people. I mean, for crying out loud, it's not exactly like.
I mean, isn't that usually the place where they say it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there? Isn't that the usual?
Well, if the volcano goes, it is you'll see the end of the world from there very quickly. We should one of these days we have to chat about that too, because there's been some recent discussion. We're running out of time here, but some recent discussion lately about people saying that the activity may be picking up at the Yellowstone supervolcano. So maybe that's a topic for another day.
Sure.
Hopefully it won't go off before we get to that that subject.
We'll have a warning if it does.
Quickly, what's the website and the telephone number?
Telephone number for the observatory, 732-MOON. That's the easy one. If you want more general information for the museum, 732-6655. And the website is herrett.csi.edu. And you can also follow us on Facebook.
I want to thank for Chris Anderson for coming by today. Just quickly, if you did not get a chance to hear a lot of our conversation, you may need to get your hearing checked. Give a call to Dr. Christine Pickup, a director of audiology at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert, 208-312-0957, or go to her website, mountharrisonaudiology.com. Remember, hearing loss and dementia can be linked. Hearing loss becomes a great burden on the brain as you have to expend more time and energy to decipher what others are saying to you. Treating hearing loss reduces the strain and makes hearing more natural. Keep your brain healthy by taking care of your hearing.